Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy Kenny, and this is Unsung Season 10. And this episode is about one of my favorite groups of all time, After7. Man, this was a phenomenal episode, and it really took me back watching this episode because I remember growing up with them. I remember hearing After7 on the radio and watching their videos when I'm in like first or second grade. So, and I'm like 34 now, so it's like, wow, it was kind of like my childhood playing back to me, and I thoroughly enjoyed this episode, and I'm glad. Mm, Sorry about that, y'all. You don't see that. But I am thoroughly glad that they have actually, done an episode on them, and they finally got to showcase them in a different light. And I'm even also happy to say that they have an album right now that is currently right now climbing the charts. So just goes to show you right there that this is a timeless act, and that they represent classic R&B to the fullest, and that they are a real force. And I'm glad that they are still getting their just due. All right. Well, to start off, they're all from Indianapolis, Indiana. The group consisted of brothers Melvin Edmonds and Kevon Edmonds, and their friend Keith Mitchell. And currently, also right now, Melvin's son, Jason Edmonds, is also a part of the group as well, especially when they tour because after Melvin had a stroke, he's not able to tour as much. But he's still a part of the group, so that's good to know. Um, some of the inspirations as far as like other groups were like the OJs, the Spinners, and the Stylistics. And if you really look at After7 style, you can see elements of the OJs, the Stylistics, or the Spinners in their presentation and in their performance. I mean, you really see an ode to classic, to the classic R&B male group. And it's great because they pretty much stayed with that, and they pretty much brought that to the era of the '90s and New Jack Swing, and they just had their own lane. Um, as far as the Edmund family, um, their father had died in 1982, which really, set the family back a big deal because, the father was like the main breadwinner of the family, and actually losing that force, changed everything. The mother pretty much had to work, I think, like two jobs to kind of keep everything up, and the boys, and I think it was a total of six children. One of those children, one of the youngest boys, Kenneth Babyface Edmonds, who we now know today as Babyface, was actually one of them. And they pretty much said that during that time, they pretty much had to raise themselves because the mother was always working, so they pretty much had to fend for themselves at that time. They also mentioned that around this time, Melvin gets married, and he gets a job, I think, working at an auto dealership, kind of the same work that their father did. Also, Kevon went to Indiana University, and that's where he met Kevin. And Kevin was definitely also grew up in Indiana as well. He pretty much sang in church with his family group, and then became like a director of the choir, and also was personally selected to direct this mass choir as well. So it's like they had music ingrained in them, and it was second nature to them. And on top of it, they went to Indiana University, and I know that, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think Indiana University has like one of the best music departments in the country. Some of the best, composers, teachers, performers, pianists. A lot of them come from the University of Indiana. So that was cool that the both of them were actually at that school when they met, and they pretty much have been tight ever since, and they really wanted to pursue a music career. And they were headstrong on putting together a group and really making it work. And pretty much, they, along with Melvin, end up forming a group, and they all had, full-time jobs, but still was pursuing music. And they would go to, like, these, like, gong shows, and they were knocking them out the park. I mean, they were winning a lot of these, talent shows, and they were still, honing their craft and working on their stage, on their staging and all of that. Pretty much working on the actual presence of the group, within that time frame. Well, while this is going on in Indiana, in California, their younger brother, Kenneth Babyface Edmonds, has already made a name for himself. He was a part of the R&B group The Deal. He's now writing for some of the best artists in the industry. Him along with Dale Simmons and L.A. Reid, they became like this triumvirate, writing team. And they've been doing a lot of work, working with other artists. And, he's also, by this time, he's also an established artist himself as a solo artist. So by this time, he actually sends for his brothers, to come to L.A. And this was awesome too, because they literally got signed to Virgin Records sight unseen, because due to the fact that Babyface has now made a name in the industry, and now he has major contacts in the industry, they pretty much knew that if he brought somebody to the table, it was no joke, and it was taken seriously. And they pretty much get signed to Virgin Records. And he also gave them the name After7, which is actually based on an answering service, like after 7 minutes, leave your message at the tone. Well, they pretty much, but then again, he was saying that's where it came from. But then if you kind of think about After7 is when the Grown and Classy come out, and they wanted to represent that. So that also was kind of a spin as to why they got their name. But yeah, that's how they got the name After7. It was after it was actually after a voice answering service, which was awesome. Now, the thing about this group is that all three of the members were in their 30s once they came to fame, which is kind of like a shocker, because like mostly people in their 30s, they're not given the light to. But due to the fact that, black don't crack, they were able to go past that, because they didn't look like they were in their 30s, even though they were. And and that was pretty much something that was kind of like their little secret, is that they were far more older than the audience that they were being catered to. But their first album, which was their self-titled album, they had a hit called "Heat Up the Moment," which is a really good song. It went number 5 on the R&B charts, and it went top 20 on pop. And not only that, they also had "Ready or Not," which was their first number 1 R&B song, and that song still rocks to this day. I mean, every time I hear "Ready or Not," I'm like, okay, it just grabs my attention still to this day. Another song that another one is "Can't Stop." I used to love that track. I used to hear it all the time. I used to watch it on BET. I used to hear it on the radio, and this was like when I'm like in 1st or 2nd grade. I used to love that song. I can't stop how I feel. I'm digging on you, you digging on me, we digging on me. I'm like, ugh. Like, man, it's just that song just really takes me back. But that was another number 1 R&B hit for them. So their first album went platinum. They had 2 number 1 hits, and that album went platinum, and it really put them out there. And they even went on tour, with Troop, Michel'le, and Heavy D. So they became a force, literally with that first album. I mean, they literally had the industry's attention. But sadly, later on, we see that Melvin Edmonds actually falls under the guise of drug addiction, which began to hurt them creatively as well as professionally, because there were a lot of deadlines and things that they had to meet up, and because Melvin would sometimes wouldn't show up, or he would miss gigs or would come late and things like that. And then when he was there, he wasn't very coherent. This later on became a problem, for the group, because this was something that they told me in this episode that I did not know. But the song My, which became a big hit for Johnny Gill, was originally meant for After7, but because Melvin didn't actually make it to the recording session, because both Kevon and Keith were there, but because they didn't have Melvin there to pretty much round off their sound and to do that recording, and they had to do it that day because it was the deadline, and due to the fact that Melvin didn't show up, they ended up passing the song to Johnny Gill, and you definitely know that's definitely one of Johnny's, signature songs to this day. So, and it just goes to show you the actual magic that Daryl Simmons, Kenny Babyface Edmonds, and Ellie Reed had behind the pen and within production. I mean, because everything that they put out was blowing up, regardless of who they put it on. Anybody that they put their magic behind, that song took off. They also talk about their second album, which was called Taking My Time. It went gold. They had a number 10 R&B hit with the song Nights Like This, which is from the Five Heartbeats. Nights like this I wish that raindrops would fall. Love that song, and definitely remember it from the movie. And I remember it being on the radio, the After7 version, and their version was awesome. And also, another hit they had on their second album was pretty much, it went to number 5 on the R&B charts, and it was Baby I'm For Real. Now, this I did not know, but this song was actually co-written by Marvin Gaye, and the other person who wrote the song with him was his wife at the time, Anna Gordy. So Anna Gordy and Marvin Gaye wrote that song, and it was cut on this group called The Originals. But After7 push their own swag and their own, and their own presentation on it. And the song, their version is awesome. I mean, even to this day, when I hear their version, I'm so into it, because they really brought that song to life. They pretty much gave it another life. Because when the song came out on Motown with The Originals, it didn't do so well on the charts, but it still was a good song. And for them to do it and give it a totally different light, and it ends up becoming a top 5 R&B hit, that just goes to show you the magic and the sheer talent of After7. Also, what was going on is that, pretty much starting after their second album, they started to have issues with Virgin Records. A lot of it was due to the fact that they felt they weren't being promoted properly, and that they weren't really reaching the audience that they wanted to reach, and that they were kind of being pigeonholed, or more or less kind of thrown to the side, because other artists were pretty much getting that backing that they weren't getting at the time. So this became like a major issue for them in the label, and it was definitely a problem where they eventually they parted ways, and it was after just doing 3 albums with them. And the crazy thing about it too is that when they left, they were over $100,000, they had over $100,000 of recoup expenses, but he let them go and said that, look, we'll cut our loss, and you guys can go on and try to pursue your endeavors, which is very unheard of, because usually record companies sue the shit out of you when you still owe them money and you decide to to get out of your contract. But based on the fact that he actually the actual executive who actually dealt with them, he actually liked them. So he pretty much said that, look, we'll just cut our losses, and I wish you guys the best. You know, it didn't work out with us, so I'll just let you guys go. And even Kenneth Davis Edmonds said that, look, that's in some cases really unheard of, because usually if you owe that kind of money, they either kind of hold you in your contract till they get their recoup back, or they're taking your ass to court. And not only that, you'll be told off to every other record label. That didn't happen for them, so they pretty much got out of their contract, and they pretty much went on to try to seek other opportunities, but then they come to realize that finding another label wasn't easy. Their third album that they did on Virgin before they left was Reflections. Now, Reflections went gold, but the only hit that really came off of that album was Till You Do Me Right, which was definitely a really beautiful song. It went number 5 on the R&B charts, and it's pretty much a song that even rings true to this day. I mean, if you hear Till You Do Me Right, it grabs your attention because it's a song that tells you the truth. I mean, and hearing Melvin's voice and Kevon's voice, and I love their two voices because their voices really do respond to each other. So I think like Kevon is like a first tenor and Melvin being a second tenor, both of them being tenors, and that they both have, they both are such dynamic vocalists that they literally play off of each other, and it's beautiful. And I for one of my biggest inspirations as a singer was Kevon Edmonds. I mean, I love Kevon's voice, and it's like as soon as I hear Kevon sing, I'm literally like a kid, like in class, like I'm really trying to take every note I can to try to sing like this guy because I love his voice. Also, after they had left Virgin Records, they did this song on the Soul Food soundtrack as this group Milestone, along with Casey and JoJo, and the song was I Care About You, and man, I love that song. I mean, they played that song out. The video, the being played on the radio, I mean, everywhere I went, I used to hear the song. Like, and that song is my shit to this day. Girl, I care about you. I'm there for you. Sorry about that. Oh yeah, but I love that song, and and it was great because you literally heard both Kevon and KC sing that part, towards the end when they hit that note, and the fact that KC could hit the note just like Kevon, that was awesome, and they both came together and they really made that happen. So, and the thing about it is that they also performed this on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and the audience loved it. Like, the women were eating it up. I mean, they got a standing ovation. And at this time, they were really thinking about actually making Milestone a real group and combining all of them. But due to the fact that they were, due to the fact of, their contracts and the fact that Casey and JoJo were signed to another label, that pretty much caused problems to make that happen. But that was pretty much almost a possibility that they were going to make Milestone a group. But Milestone was just pretty much the name of the group that was used in the movie Soul Food. Because, that was the group that supposedly Miles, who was married to Terry, created. And pretty much due to the fact that things were starting to fall apart for them as far as the business side of things, they disbanded in '97, and they all went off to do other things. Melvin ended up becoming like a trucker, like working around Lake Tahoe. Keith, at first had opened a restaurant. He battled homelessness for about 4 to 6 months, and then he ends up also having a construction business that he still does that to this day. I mean, he's been doing this for over 14 years. He has his own construction business. So he pretty much, even though he went through hard times, he made do. And Kevon still maintained his singing career. In 1999, he put out 24/7. The title track was a hit. 24/7. Loved that song. Used to sing it all the time. Love his voice. And, you know, it rang true. And sadly, as I mentioned before, in 2010, Melvin Edmonds had a stroke. And his son, Jason Edmonds, now sings in his place. And he even kind of joked when he said that people be like, "Oh yeah, you sound good, but you ain't like your daddy." And he kind of gets a chuckle out of it, because he said that that his dad is that dynamic vocalist, and he learned a lot from his father. And 2016, and I think this album was released in late October of 2016. They released this album, Timeless, and they actually included Melvin on the track. Even though Melvin really can't tour with them, Melvin is still a part of the group, especially when it comes down to the recordings. So they pretty much, they pretty much lay the tracks on that, and I'm happy to say that two of the tracks, Let Me Know and I Want You, both went number 6 on the R&B charts, and this song called Running Out is currently climbing the charts right now as we speak. So this is awesome that, you know, After7 really does represent the name of that album. They are timeless, because even though they may not have been like a big seller, or they may not have had, you know, the longevity, they may not have had the mainstream success that some other artists had, they had something special, and they definitely were a class act in and of themselves. And they're timeless because, you know, even to this day, they're still doing it. And even to this day, the audience hasn't left. If anything, the audience has grown for After7. And I think with this new album, I think this is not only going to bring them new legion of fans, but it's going to actually finally cement them as being a class act that will never die. And I can also say I'm actually honored to actually review this episode of After7, because this is a group I grew up with, and to actually see that even though these men are now older, they're still strong, they're still determined, they're still talented, and they're still making it happen. So that's my review for this episode. Subscribe to my channel. Leave comments on this video, like this video, share this video. If I missed anything, put it down in the comments. I would love to talk to you about it. But then I will also be back next week for the next episode of Unsung. So until then, everybody, take care.